There was a point every Sunday evening when you suddenly noticed how quiet everything had become. Not because anyone told you, not because the clock struck a certain hour, you just felt it. The street outside had emptied. No engines, no voices, just that low hum of electricity and nothing else. Inside the house, the sound changed too. Even the walls seemed to settle. You hadn't done anything wrong. Nothing bad had happened. And yet, the weekend was already slipping away. Sunday evenings didn't end. They faded. And everyone in Britain knew exactly what that feeling meant. Inside the house, everything shifted without announcement. Voices dropped, movements slowed, even footsteps sounded heavier. Tea was poured into familiar mugs. Not fancy ones. The everyday mugs, chipped at the rim, still warm from the cupboard. Someone stirred sugar slowly. Someone else blew on the surface, waiting. No one rushed. The radio came on low, so low you didn't always know what was being said. But you knew the voices. You always knew the voices. The clock on the wall ticked louder than it had all day. Each second stretched. Each minute felt deliberate. Parents sat differently on Sunday evenings, closer together, quieter, tired in a way that wasn't physical. Children noticed it without knowing why. The air felt thicker. Time felt heavier. Outside, the street lamps flickered on, their orange glow spilling onto empty pavements. No kids playing, no footballs bouncing, no bikes scraping along the curb. The country was already preparing for Monday. Sunday evenings weren't about resting. They were about getting ready. Bath night arrived like a rule that couldn't be questioned. It had always been that way. It always would be. Water ran into the tub. Steam crept along the ceiling. The smell of soap filled the hallway. Towels were laid out in order. 1, 2, 3. Hung carefully over the radiators. Children waited their turn. First, second, last. Always knowing who went when. The bathwater was hottest for the first, barely warm for the last. No one complained. That was just how it worked. Hair was washed, faces scrubbed, ears checked, necks cleaned thoroughly. Clean pajamas waited on the bed, slightly stiff, still smelling faintly of washing powder. You didn't ask why Sunday was bath night. You just knew it was. Back downstairs, the evening continued quietly. School uniforms appeared. Ironing boards unfolded. Steam hissed and faded. Creases were pressed flat. Shirts folded neatly. Everything had its place. School bags were checked. Books stacked. Pens returned to pencil cases. Shoes were lined up by the door. Polished. Ready. Waiting. Nothing was left to chance. Everything was prepared before bedtime. That was the point. The radio stayed on, sometimes music, sometimes voices talking calmly about things that didn't matter. The television flickered quietly in the corner. Volume low, almost an afterthought. No one channel hopped. There was nothing to search for. This was what was on. Sunday evening television wasn't exciting. It wasn't meant to be. It simply filled the room. The sound wrapped around you, held you, stopped your thoughts from running too far ahead. Children watched without really watching. Parents listened without really listening. Everyone felt the same thing. But no one named it. Tomorrow was already there, waiting. You could feel Monday before it arrived, in the weight of the air, in the way adults sighed, in the way children went quiet. Sunday evenings stretched time. Minutes felt longer. Hours moved slowly. You looked at the clock more than usual, then wished you hadn't. Outside, nothing changed. The street remained still, as if the whole neighborhood had agreed to pause. Somewhere a dog barked once, then stopped. The kettle boiled again. Another round of tea. One last biscuit. The house smelled clean. Soap. Warm fabric. faint traces of dinner. Everything was in order. Everything was ready. Sunday evenings weren't happy, but they weren't sad either. They were something else, something deeper. They were comfort mixed with dread, safety mixed with knowing. You were held by routine, by familiarity, by knowing exactly what came next. No phones rang, no messages arrived, no screens demanded attention. Nothing pulled you away from the moment. You were simply there. Eventually, bedtime came, earlier than you wanted, later than you realized. Lights went out one by one. The radio clicked off. The house settled. Upstairs, beds were cold, sheets crisp, blankets heavy. You lay listening, to pipes, to distant traffic, to nothing at all. Tomorrow would come whether you were ready or not. But for now, it waited. Sunday evenings didn't entertain us. They didn't distract us. They held us. If you remember the quiet streets, the bath night, the low radio voices, then this was your Sunday too. And it mattered. Sometimes Sunday evenings smelled different. Not like mornings, not like weekdays. They smelled of warm soap and clean skin, of damp towels slowly drying on radiators, of tea leaves and washing powder and the last trace of dinner. Those smells told you the day was ending, even if you hadn't looked at the clock. Some families kept the fire on, not roaring, just enough to take the edge off the cold. You sat closer to it than usual, hands stretched out, feeling the heat on your palms. Outside, frost sometimes crept along the pavement, a thin white line forming where shadows stayed longest. Windows misted from the inside. Sunday evening always felt colder, even when it wasn't. Adults checked the time more often, not because they were in a hurry, but because they were measuring what was left. Children sensed it, that quiet tension, that invisible line between now and tomorrow. Homework lay untouched, already done, or deliberately ignored. There was no excitement left in the day, only completion. Somewhere in the house, water pipes knocked softly, a reminder that everything was still working, that the house was alive around you. Parents talked about ordinary things, work, weather, someone they might see in the week. Nothing urgent, nothing emotional, just enough conversation to fill the space. Sometimes the radio was switched off entirely, and the quiet became complete. You could hear your own breathing, the shift of fabric when someone moved, the faint hum of electricity in the walls. Sunday evenings gave you time to think, whether you wanted it or not. Thoughts wandered, to school, to work, to things you couldn't change. That was part of it. The stillness forced reflection. Eventually someone would say it, not loudly, almost apologetically. Time for bed. No one argued, no one rushed. You went because that was the order of things. Upstairs lights came on briefly, then went out again. The house settled deeper into itself, like it was bracing for the week ahead. Beds felt colder on Sunday nights, sheets tighter, blankets heavier. You lay awake longer than usual, listening, waiting. Monday existed already. Even if it hadn't arrived, Sunday evenings were never forgotten, because they were felt, not watched, not celebrated. They asked nothing from you, except that you noticed them. They belonged to everyone, and to no one at the same time. And once they were gone forever. Sometimes you stared at the ceiling in the dark. Patterns formed in the plaster, shapes you had seen 100 times before. You traced them with your eyes, anything to slow the night. Somewhere nearby, another house settled. Floorboards creaked, a door closed softly. You wondered if other children were awake too, lying still, thinking the same thoughts. Sunday evenings connected houses like that, through walls, through silence. No one spoke about it. but everyone felt it. Morning would arrive quietly, without warning, without permission, and the week would begin again. Sleep came slowly on Sunday nights, not because you weren't tired, but because your mind wouldn't let go. You drifted in and out, half dreams, half thoughts. The house made its night noises, a pipe clicking as it cooled, the wind brushing against the window, someone turning over in their sleep. At some point, you dreamed of school corridors, of work clocks, of places you didn't want to be yet. You woke once, unsure why, the room completely dark, the silence deeper than before. Then you slept again. Morning arrived without ceremony, a pale grey light seeping through the curtains, not bright, not hopeful, just there. You knew before you opened your eyes. Sunday was gone. Somewhere downstairs a floorboard creaked. A kettle would boil soon. The week had begun, and whatever comfort Sunday night had given, it quietly let go.